Hi there, Calm 111. This is Harrison Temple, and I'm here to do my informative speech. There's a whole lot of stuff that I could be informing you about, and stuff that you know and probably don't want to hear right now. But today I'm going to be talking about bread. Why bread? That's a stupid thing to do a speech about. Well, I think it could be very useful in these times. I went to the store recently, and there was nothing to be seen in the way of bread. No loaves, no nothing except for gluten-free, and that's the devil's mischief. So, I've been baking bread for about 8 years. My grandma taught me how when I was in middle school. And there's three main benefits that I've come to notice from baking my own bread. One, it's easy to make. Two, it's way cheaper than buying bread from the store. And lastly, it's better for you. And look, my computer screen's ascending to the great beyond. There, it's back. So first, I'm going to start with some history on bread making and the bread through the ages. Then I'm going to move on to the cost benefits. And lastly, I'm going to tell you about the health benefits that you can achieve through bread. And hopefully you'll remember this speech as the guy who tried to make an interesting speech out of white bread. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with a brief history of bread. So, bread as we know it has existed for thousands of years. The earliest evidence of bread, a piece of bread, was found in Jordan that dates back to 14,000 years ago. So we've had it for a while, it's existed. That's because almost every culture has access to cereal grains, being wheat, barley, whatever. And they utilize it to form energy-dense foods, and bread just happens to be one of those foods. In the West, we have mostly leavened bread, and until the 1930s, it was mostly made within the home in America. The big changing factor was the industrialization that happened in America that went on through World War II. So what we have is the expression, the best thing since sliced bread. That's because we didn't always have sliced bread. And now that machines produce most of the bread that you see, it's become kind of a artisanal craft, and people assume that since no one makes their own bread, it's some difficult task. Well, I'm here today to tell you that it's super easy. So here I'm going to pull up a recipe. This is the recipe that I'm going to follow later when I do a short tutorial on how to make your own bread. I hope you can read that. So basically what we've got is flour, sugar, salt, shortening, water, yeast, and butter to put on top. So this is super basic. It's in fact one of the most basic things that you can cook. The only reason why that people don't anymore is because it's a bit of a time commitment. It's not hard, it's just tedious. It takes about 3 hours to make a good loaf of bread. So why do it? So now I'm going to move on to cost benefits, and we'll illuminate that a little bit more. Alright, so now I'd like to talk about cost benefits. So, if making your own bread takes longer, it takes about 3 hours, what's the point of doing it? Well, there's two very good reasons why. First, like I said, is the cost benefit. We'll cover the health benefits in just a little bit. So, I created a spreadsheet. I won't show it here because it's boring and stupid, but I broke down the cost of flour per batch of bread, the cost of flour, sugar, salt, the other ingredients per loaf of bread. And what I came to is that the cost per loaf of homemade bread is about $1.41. Now, the cost in the US of store-bought bread is $2.50. As we can see, there's an incredible cost benefit that can be achieved through making your own bread. And an additional bonus, you're not trapped into buying bread at the supermarket when there isn't any, like there isn't right now. So if you can have access to these basic ingredients, you can make your own bread for $1 on the loaf. It's an amazing profit. It's huge. All right, and lastly, now that we've covered the simplicity of bread and the history of it, as well as the cost benefits for making your own bread, what else is there? Well, there's health benefits. The bread that you buy at the store, if it's white bread, and that's what I'm talking about here, It's usually made with bleached flour. Now, this was invented in the early 1900s, and it was a way to make flour bright white, because back then, flour that was white was more expensive, and people couldn't afford white flour were well thought of. So they invented a way to artificially whiten flour by removing parts of the grain. These parts contain a lot of the minerals and vitamins that are healthy to us. So by doing this, we create bread that is prettier, but it's not as good for you. And also, bread is a temporary food. It's not meant to last long because it's basically a big pile of starch. It'll get moldy. So a lot of the bread that you see, it has lots of preservatives, maybe some artificial colors if it's the cheap stuff, and it's made with bleached flour. The health benefits of homemade bread is that you have no trans fats. That'll be shortening, and you can replace that for butter and make it healthier. No preservatives, because why would you need them? No artificial colors, again, you don't need them. And you have the option to use unbleached flour, which has those healthy vitamins and minerals. Or you could use a whole wheat flour, which is equally good for you, but it tastes icky and it's bad. So with these three things, health, cost, and simplicity, we can have an error and our internet will crash. I'll come back and do the conclusion in just a second. All right, we've come basically to the end of our presentation. I've covered the simplicity and history of bread, either made at home or made by a commercial baker. I've covered the cost benefit of making your own bread at home, and I've covered the health benefits of making your own bread at home. So I hope you can take this information away and apply it to your own lives as we all work together to get through this quarantine. And if you can't find the bread that you're looking for at your supermarket, maybe give this a try. So that about wraps it up. So let's get this bread. That was awful. Anyway, after I'm done with this, I'm going to transfer over. I recorded a whole segment of me showing how to make bread at home, but it didn't really fit into this presentation and meet the requirements of the assignment. But I worked really hard on it, and even though it's awful because I only did it in one take, I'd still like to show it off because I used 2 whole special effects in it, and I think the world deserves to see it. So check it out right after this, or leave forever. I wouldn't blame you. Hello viewers. I filmed the following video yesterday. I did it in the belief that I was fulfilling the requirements of delivering a speech that was both informative and supplied with a good visual aid. I then texted Jay and realized that I was stupid. So, this entire thing was created on a mad dash just today, the day that it's due. My internet has crashed 3 times, and my head is completely empty. God has filled it with bread. There's flour in my cranium. This is the video that the world never should have seen. And I don't know why my original speech that you just saw is about bread too. It could have been about anything. But it's the only thing I've thought about. It's the only thing I do. Quarantine has ruined my entire life, and there's nothing but bread. Endless sprawling plains of bread. Bon appetit. Alright, now that we got all the information out of the way, we can actually get down to making the bread. So first, we're going to take our flour. Sugar, salt, and yeast. And we're going to add our water. Oh, and we only add half of our flour now, and then we add the rest later. Start that mixing. And then we're going to add about half a stick of butter. And then we're going to mix that until it forms kind of a thick slurry. Now we're going to add the rest of our flour, 1 cup at a time. And our goal here is to get kind of a thick, rough dough that we can knead into a smoother mass later. So once you're done mixing it up in the mixer, you should be left with a rough, shaggy dough that looks about like this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start kneading it by hand until it becomes smooth and pliable. This, I think, is the part of the bread making process that's the most cathartic. You can really let it all out on this hunk of dough. It's pretty meditative. I think I talked about this earlier. I don't know because I'm making this part first and doing the boring part later. So once this is done, I'll see you then. So once you're done kneading your dough and it looks nice and smooth about like this, what you're going to want to do is knead it and then form it into a ball. And then place it in a greased bowl like this, and you're going to want to cover that with plastic wrap. Exciting news. Impressive cinema. Plastic wrap is Satan's mischief. So once that's done, you're going to want to let this dough sit for about 45 minutes, and that'll let it rise, and then it'll be ready for shaping. So I'll catch up with you in a bit. Alright, it's been about 50 minutes, and our dough has doubled, so now we're going to punch it down, take it out, and then we're ready to shape our loaves. So now we're going to take our dough, split it about in half, fold it a couple times, and form it into kind of a little log about like this, and put it in our greased pan. We're going to do the same thing for this pan here, and then we're going to let it rise again, and that'll be about 30 minutes. See you then. Alright folks, it's risen enough, so I'm just going to wait a little while and spread the top of this with some melted butter, and then it'll be ready to go in the oven. So you at home, if you decide to follow this horrible video, you're going to want to heat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Alright, so our oven's hot and it's time to put our things into the oven. We'll bake the loaves for about 25 minutes and then they'll be done. Alright, the bread's out of the oven. Just put an extra layer of butter on top of it, and as you can see, they look pretty good. They've got a nice smooth top to them. They're really hot now, but once they cool down, I'll be able to slice it open and show you what it looks like inside. I could, but I won't, because I'm out of time. Alright, the bread's all done, and just took it out of the oven and put a little more butter on top. And as you can see, they look pretty good. They've got a nice smooth top, and really much better than anything you're going to buy at the store. They smell great. The end.